In this series, lowimpact.org and the Open Credit Network talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
So today I'm talking with Lynn Foster of Mikorizal and Value Flows. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Dave.
I've heard some very, very good things about your work from very reputable sources, and together with your partner, Bob Haugen. I've had a look at your websites and it's very technical. I want to attempt to translate what you're doing for a general audience. I'm not a techie and I think that might be an advantage. So I've witnessed techies trying to explain things to a general audience and they usually assume a level of knowledge that's not there. Is that okay?
That is totally okay, and I will do my best to help in spite of being a techie.
Okay. So having said that, I discovered your little value flow story about the pie, about the woman who bakes pies. And that was very non-technical and easy to follow. So I'll put that in the description and I'll come back to that later. So tell me an overview. What is it that you're doing?
Okay, so Bob and I work together and live together out here in Wisconsin, and we work on software that we think will be needed to support alternative and experimental P2P, peer-to-peer kinds of economic systems, and hopefully eventually the whole thing, because we're going to need something.
Sorry. I was just wondering, what's the name of the types of tools that you're using? Are they new? Did you invent them? And how long have you been doing it?
We've been doing this for quite a few years, Bob longer than I. I joined him more full-time when I was able to retire from my day job. Tools, let's see. Well, you mentioned value flows. We created some software with various names, but probably the best known one is NRP for Network Resource Planning, which is sort of like, it's ERP, which is Enterprise Resource Planning, and kind of a standard tool for enterprises, but for networks. And let's see, what else? Names, boy.
Is it like a toolkit? I mean,
eventually it could be a toolkit. And we think it needs to be kind of a combination of things. So there's pieces of software which we would like to kind of create the whole thing so that any developer can plug in software that they want using the tools and programming languages they want to use, and that all this stuff will talk to each other and kind of create a whole networked ecosystem of software that could create a whole networked ecosystem of economic activity.
And does it require any specialized equipment or anything out of the ordinary or any specialist training?
It doesn't exist to that extent yet. So that's hard to answer. Some of the projects we're working with, I don't know, I'm going to say none of it's going to require specialized tools, and hopefully not, it depends on who you are, if you're a developer or if you're just a user group who wants to put together a nice suite of software that's open source that you can use and talk to other groups with their software. That should be, we hope, easy.
So what is the toolkit for? What does it do? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve?
So, do you mind if I get a little kind of hand wavy for a sec?
Absolutely fine.
I think we've used the term economic operating system, and I think that's what kind of put you and I into contact here. And
you said you were building a new operating system. What was it? An operating system for the new economy.
Okay. Yep. That's what we're trying to do. Now that sounds a little grandiose. So we obviously
caught my attention.
We obviously don't think that's just us, but we think we have some good building blocks for that, and would love to work with other people too. So I'm gonna wave my hands for a second and then get more specific for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So some pieces that might be needed for something like an economic operating system are a way to figure out how we can have an economy that doesn't destroy the earth. What are our limits?
That would be a good idea.
And it would be a good start, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And within that, okay, who's going to do what? Obviously, we're going to have to address a bunch of global inequality to make this happen. And some of us are going to have to take more of a hit than others of us, like me. But in any case, so
you're going to have to take a hit.
Well, have to dial down our lifestyles.
Right. In the West generally, not just you.
In the West generally, in the global North, Yeah. Hit was a too extreme word, I guess. And then we, once we've kind of figured out, okay, what are the limits we need to live within to survive? How do we do kind of some level of planning to get us there? And I'm not, planning is sort of a dirty word, so I don't want to make it sound like, giant state, centralized planning kinds of things. But I think we're going to have to do some planning on all different levels, starting with, okay, how much carbon? Okay, well, for this area, what do we need for food? Can we get water? And I think it's going to be at all different levels and kind of depending on what it is, Food will be much more local. Maybe heavy manufacturing will be fairly local if we can kind of get our, common designs, open source designs together and, things like that. So, food, energy, transportation, whatever our needs are, and what's kind of the right scale for all of those things.
Can I ask who does this planning? If the state doesn't do this planning, who does this planning?
Wave some hands some more. To me, obviously, it needs to be somehow democratic, but also based on knowledge of reality, and of what. I'll kind of get back around to that because I think we'll need to plan based on real knowledge of what's going on in our economies. So
hierarchies of competence rather than hierarchies of money.
Sure. And of everybody, possibly except the ones with money. I don't know. This is like a total big picture wish list thing. This is not like what we're doing, but I thought I would get, set some kind of a stage, So then if with some kinds of planning, then we, need to have some way to coordinate our economic activity with each other and to, record whatever makes sense for information that we'll need to plan, etc. And again, I kind of picture all these overlapping scopes or levels, kind of depending on what the domain is, what you're trying to do. And then feedback loops. So everybody that's worked on, you probably know this too from your work experience, like if you have a plan to say manufacture something, for example, within about 10 minutes, something's going to go wrong, right? You can't, plans don't last very long. So you need kind of a whole set of feedback loops and replanning kinds of things and, more coordination. And, so a lot of stuff needs to be done in that way. And there's a lot of, I don't know how much we need to plan versus, just work with demand within those constraints, as it keeps occurring, you can signal from demand what needs to happen too. So, and then we'll need some sort of accounting to figure it, to be able to analyze the data, figure out what we're doing, figure out what we need to do better, that kind of thing. So there's the,
okay.
there's kind of, and then so We've been working with a model called REA for resources, events, agents that it's becoming a little more well known. It started in academia, early 80s, a guy named Bill McCarthy. And it's been experimented with some, a little bit commercially, not very much. And then Bob and I have been, working with it and making it a little more implementation friendly. And we like it. It continues to work. Other models could be used, but it seems like a good one. It's very flexible and clean. And then I think a way to think about all those things I talked about earlier when I was waving my hands, and is supported by this model, is resource flows. So using this model, you can connect resource flows. You can see, well, I made this out of these things, and these things got made over here and got acquired by this other person or organization or whatever. You can track flows of resources frontwards and backwards. Sort of one of the examples people are most familiar with is like food things, people got sick. You can trace that all the way backwards to the source, and then from that source you can track it forwards into, okay, who else got that food, So that's an example. Or you could use it to say, what's the quality of my food? Like we have a group that is restaurants who want to tell their customers, yeah, I got this from this farm. This is how they grew it, that kind of thing. So it gives you, those are kind of simple, specific examples, but it gives you a way to kind of see the flows of your whole economy and maybe get them to where they need to be,
So it's like an accounting system that accounts for a lot more than just money.
Oh yeah, a lot more than just money.
And
money is okay, and maybe it's needed, or maybe it's not needed. I don't know. You all been working with mutual credit, so there's another another way to think about money. But yeah, definitely more than money.
So the other things that you might be able to account for are sustainability, democracy in the workplace, cooperation, things like that.
Definitely, and also like material resources that we need. How much food does my region need? Can we get it? Can we feed Chicago while we're at it? But yeah, you can account for lots of soft things too. And we were having an interesting discussion just last night with a group who wants to account for health and natural resources and a bunch of other stuff. It was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I was reading the other day that the UK imports 60% of its food. So
yeah, wow, huh?
If there's some sort of economic crash, which affects the transport system and the distribution system, serious trouble in the UK. And it's not as though capitalism is rock solid and it's not going to fall over. So it's quite scary.
Right.
I'm just thinking about, so if you had to label what you do, is it REA accounting?
Sure.
Yes. Okay.
You could say that. I don't know what it would mean to different people, but
so that's resource, event, agent.
Yep, resources, events, and agents. Yeah, so it's a kind of cleaned up, reduced model of old style accounting, and then taken into a place where you can network, and it doesn't matter anymore where the end of the enterprise is. You can take it across groups, across people. It sort of has this input, process, output pattern, input, process, output. That's an input to something else for creation of goods and services. And then it has just a simple transfer if you for giving something to somebody or for exchanging. And all of that stuff hooks together.
When it comes to implementation, is it really only for technical people?
What do you mean by it?
To adopt this REA accounting package or to become part of it, a networked group, would you need to have some technical people on board?
Right now, you definitely would.
Yes.
Eventually, hopefully, groups can kind of build suites of apps based on what they specifically need. And of course, technical people, it's part of our job to work with real people on the ground trying to get something done, right? So it's going to be a partnership. And, eventually, we'd like to have better ways for the whole thing to be way more intuitive. We have sort of far-ranging ideas about kind of building some of REA into the language, sort of, so that you can just think of it as at a higher level than a developer would have to. And then the value flows vocabulary that I focus on also, is meant to tie these things together in a way that's real, and standard.
What's more challenging, working with software or working with people?
Aha! I think I'm going with people. We're so complex,
Yeah.
and we're so embedded in capitalism. There are a lot of challenges there for us to get our heads in a place where we can work with each other and collaborate and get rid of some of that me first stuff that we all have, inevitably. And yeah, challenging.
Yeah. So my focus, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So my focus is on bringing people into the new economy, and B, linking up people who are working often in silos in the new economy together. And both of those things are really difficult.
Yeah, good for you.
Who do you want to reach with this, with what you're doing? Who can benefit from your work right now, and how can they adopt it? Where can they go to find out how to get involved?
They could talk to us at info@mikorizal.org.
Just contact them
and
directly.
we can just hook people up with where it makes sense. We're working on several projects where people are involved and are trying to make stuff work. And some of them are developer groups, and some of them are more like user groups on the ground. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a stage. It's a very experimental stage right now. We kind of we try to work in cycles so that we, go from theory to practice and practice to theory, So we started out and did several systems based on REA, working with kind of specific groups, some food networks and Sensorica, the sensor, open hardware people, and some others. And then that's when we kind of took that experience into trying to develop value flows, and we're influenced by a group that calls themselves the Open App Ecosystem. So they were thinking about more distributed software and more little smaller apps, so we aren't dealing with the giant things of that we've created, and the even gianter things that are like Facebook and Google and surveillance capitalism and all that good stuff, But I don't know. Did I wander off your question? I've forgotten what it was.
No. I mean, I'm struggling to understand how it works and how it can be adopted, but I think I understand the concept more. I'm sure fishermen, for example, don't want to destroy fish stocks because it's their livelihood, and I'm sure farmers don't want to kill bees and erode soil. But those things are happening because they're not accounted for. But
right.
Your system accounts for all that.
It certainly can account for that. It can count for all externalities as well as anything else. We, a few years ago, we worked briefly with a group in Nova Scotia. You mentioned fish, so that reminded me. And they, and that was exactly the situation. They've been, there are these big trawlers that just rake the bottom of the ocean and destroy the fishing beds, but for right now they can get fish cheaper than the people doing landlines, the small fishermen who are fishing sustainably, And And they were able to, using just data from the government, they were able to map out some pretty amazing stuff, even though the externalities were really hard to get. Like there's no data on how badly are you destroying the fishing beds, but there's data that says they're sending fish to China to get filleted that gets sent back to be put in Nova Scotia grocery stores. It's just like
so
crazy stuff.
What happens to this data that you collect? Is it sort of made available to the public so they can make choices about their shopping habits, or how, does it affect the price somehow? How does it affect the real world?
Well, right now it affects the real world in very, very small ways. We've worked with small groups. This is all that stuff I said at the beginning. That's like pie in the sky, right? So when you say how does it or how is it, there's a lot of work to be done. Right now we're just sort of starting back into another set of projects. Our old software has really become too old to be very workable. And so we're sort of in this in-between place where we don't even have much to offer people concretely. So there's several projects working using value flows, REA, and trying stuff on the ground. None of them are, well, one of them, there's one in Europe that is working on circular economy stuff using several pilot cities that could be pretty interesting. But, right now it's just like dabbling and getting these pieces of experience and trying to figure out how to do it in a non-Facebook Google way.
And so I'm trying to work out how to ask this question. Is the data available for consumers so they can make decisions about their consumption, or is it for the producers to make decisions about their production?
My opinion is that the data should be basically open. I mean, that maybe there's some internal data that shouldn't be open, but fundamentally, I think data and software for that matter should be open. Like we should, start gaining this trust between ourselves, to be honest. And if we want to try to build something sort of alongside what exists now, I think that's pretty fundamental.
And could producers cheat the system somehow to make it look as though their production was more sustainable than it actually is?
I don't know yet. There's a lot of discussion about trust and trustless software, starting with the blockchain and all of that. And I don't know exactly where that balance should be, but there are a lot of people working on how to make the data fairly secure and untamperable. But you know what? I don't know. That's definitely not my area of specialization. So, and I hope we can work out a balance.
Would it benefit small businesses and cooperatives in some way, or could capitalist companies just use it to their advantage as well?
Possibly they could. I don't know. It's I guess it depends on how things are set up, but it can definitely benefit cooperatives and small businesses and people and other kinds of forms of organization that people are experimenting with. But, if you think about cooperatives, and cooperatives are sort of, there are a lot of forms of that too. You have producer cooperatives, worker cooperatives, consumer cooperatives, and you can have more multi-stakeholder cooperatives, that try to combine that and balance pricing and whatever, even just within the cooperative. So yeah, but that it's certainly an opportunity to start networking all those things together.
So could you just say a little bit more about REA accounting, what it means, the resource, event, agent? How are those three things linked together, and how is it different from conventional accounting?
So conventional accounting has like credits and debits and that sort of thing. Computers gave us the capability to not have to do accounting that way, where you were keeping those balances. So REA accounting kind of starts with recording just what happens, and that's the basis of all summarized data. What happens is an event. And an event can create a resource. It can make more of a resource. It can consume some or all of a resource. It can use a resource like a piece of equipment or something. So that's not gone, but it's unavailable for some hours or whatever. You can, maintain a resource, fix it, make it back to what it should be. You can, and that those things can all be services too, and they can be sort of, so you can, somebody can, you can go to the dentist and receive some dental services or whatever that makes your health better. So anyway, so events are all those things. Events are what puts resources in motion in some way. And agents are people or organizations or groups of any kind that have agency. So an event usually has like an agent that's a provider and an agent that's a receiver. And the simplest one you can think of is just like, I'm going to give you some cookies. I'm the provider agent. You're the receiver agent. That was an event that transferred some cookies from me to you. Let's see. That was the event, the resource, and the agent. Like I said earlier, we have also something called process, so that we have processes that have input events and output events. So that's a way that production and creation happens. Like input might be some work, and input might be some components. Might be a piece of equipment that you use. You might have used somebody's design, and you might want to cite that and say, wow, this design, was a really important input to what I made. And here's what I made, and here's all the work I did, and here's some work that some other people did, and, using their skills, which is sort of a little our resource, So that's how it works.
And
REA plus a process. And so that you can do that at the planning level. You can do that at the, actual work level. And you can do it to kind of think ahead. You can use it for budgeting, or you can use it for higher level analysis or whatever. It's all the same REA pattern.
And can it be used in every sector of the economy? Can you think of any sectors that it wouldn't work in?
I think it can be used in every sector of the economy. And if it can't, we should make it so. Like, I really think we need this basic, simple model to be able to hook all this stuff together productively. So I think so.
And at the moment, are you getting paid by clients, or do you get funding, or is it pro bono?
It's all pro bono for me and Bob. We're retired. We get U.S. Social Security, which is sort of the government pension that you build up through your working life. And so we moved to the country where we can live really cheaply and relatively sustainably. And so, yeah, we just do it. And we are privileged to be able to do that.
Is it fun?
Oh, yeah, it's super fun. I mean, it's really wonderful just being able to work together. Like, I can't even imagine working by myself in a lot of ways. We complement each other. So, yeah, it's super fun. And we work a lot, but we work at a comfortable pace. We don't punch any clocks. We do what needs doing, and then we take a walk and kind of talk and figure out where we're at or whatever. And it's like that. We need to do a chore, we just go do a chore. Or